Get rid of remaining Boko Haram elements. Defense Minister challenges troops in Borno State.
NEMA restates commitment to providing relief materials to victims of flood disaster in the country.
We have not abandoned recruitment exercise. Police Service Commission assures thousands of applicants.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss matters arising from Nigeria's outing at the just concluded TICAD 7 in Yokohama, Japan.
President Muhammadu Buhari is back in the country after a robust outing at the 7th Tokyo International Conference on African Development TICAD 7 in Yokohama, Japan, with the theme Advancing Africa's Development Through People, Technology and Innovation.
That's right, Kiriana. President Buhari led Nigeria's delegation comprising some state governors and top government functionaries to the Triennial Tokyo International Conference on African Development, which is an open forum that generates innovative discussions among various stakeholders on African development. Now, more than 20 African leaders attended this year's conference.
Yes, and our President, Muhammadu Buhari, is not a stranger to TICAD, having first participated in TICAD 6, which held in Nairobi, Kenya in 2016. And since that Nairobi conference, Japanese government and companies have been active in supporting Nigeria's agriculture, healthcare, electricity, and youth empowerment.
At the just concluded TICAD 7, now President Buhari held bilateral meetings with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan, who on behalf of the Asian country pledged a sum of $300,000 to support Nigeria's Defense College, as well as another 12 million yen to be sunk into the health sector of Nigeria.
Yes, and besides that, Kingsley, Nigeria equally signed a memorandum of understanding with the European Union, which will attract a whopping 50 million euros from the EU to support humanitarian and development efforts in Nigeria's northeast region. This would bring EU support for Nigeria to 562 million euros between 2014 and the year 2020.
Of course, Kiriana, that's a huge support for Nigeria to fast-track human capital development and the reconstruction of the northeast region that is ravaged by years of insurgency. Now, meanwhile, leaders of a Toyota conglomerate renowned for automobiles and other interests in energy and healthcare also met with President Buhari and then announced a plan to set up a world-class advanced medical diagnostic center in Nigeria, and this will be in collaboration with Siemens of Germany.
Yeah, and while the president welcomed that plan, Kingsley, he, however, insisted that Toyota should also consider establishing automobile plants in the country to provide jobs for Nigerians and perhaps crash the prices of such automobiles in the country.
And Kirian, one other big takeaway from President Buhari's engagement in Japan was when he met with the Nigerian community living in that country and made it clear to the world that the few Nigerians indulging in criminal activities abroad do not represent the values of the majority of the people who are Nigerians. Now, that bold clarification couldn't have come at a better time, given the FBI's recent list of 77 Nigerians who have been investigated for electronic fraud in the United States.
That's indeed a huge one, for very few Nigerians to be denting the image of a nation such as ours. Now, in the words of the president, and I quote, "We will not condone any crime, whether at home or abroad, and we will also not allow these few Nigerians define us as a people." To say the least, Kingsley, that was instructive. And President Buhari did not bat an eyelid too when he met on the sidelines with President Ramaphosa of South Africa over incessant xenophobic attacks on Nigerians in that country. And President Talon of Benin Republic, who pleaded with the Nigerian leader to rescind the partial closure of Nigeria's border with Benin Republic due to massive smuggling activities, especially in rice, taking place on that corridor.
You're right, Kirian. Now, of course, we're going to discuss matters arising from TICAD 7 on the program today, and we thank you for tuning in to today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you, as always, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and once again, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
And I'm Kirian Umayo. Thank you for joining us on the program this morning. And of course, we have the complimentary parts of the program which are brought to you. We'll bring you newspaper review, business, sports, and others. Our colleague Nolene Abel Ame is on standby now with morning news. Hello, Nolene.
Hi, Kirian. Good morning. Good morning, Nigeria. And this is the early morning news. The Minister of Defense, Bashir Magashi, has charged troops of Sector 3 in Gubio, Borno State to be focused and ensure rapid clearance of the remnant of Boko Haram. The minister gave the charge while on operational visit to Borno State.
Whatever you need, I encourage you this job. I assure you, the Nigerian government will be prepared ever before to do the kind of thing that will make you more motivated to do this job. Am I understood?
Meanwhile, the Nigerian Air Force has neutralized scores of Boko Haram terrorists in airstrikes conducted at UAC in Borno State. A statement issued by Director Public Relations and Information, Nigerian Air Force Air Commodore Ibikunle Daramola, states that the air raid was executed in continuation of Operation Green Sweep 3 after credible human intelligence reports, which were also corroborated by a series of intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance missions established that the settlement was being used as a hideout for the Boko Haram terrorists. The Air Task Force therefore detailed 2 Alpha jets and an L-39ZA aircraft to attack the target area, scoring crucial hits on the hideout, leading to the neutralization of several Boko Haram fighters. The statement further says that the NAF operating in concert with surface forces will sustain its operations against the terrorists in the northeast. Some repentant bandits in Zamfara State have surrendered 4 rifles, live ammunition, and military uniform to the state's police command. Zamfara State Commissioner of Police Usman Nagogo, who displayed the weapons to Governor Bello Muhammad at Government House, Gusau, said the development marked the commencement of the disarmament aspect of the ongoing peace initiative in the state. Still on security, the Police Service Commission says it will meet this week to take a decision on the recruitment of 10,000 Nigerians into the constable cadre of the Nigeria Police Force, a process which is currently at its final stage. In a statement, the Commission assured applicants that the exercise will be concluded soon and the names of successful candidates released. The Commission says it will continue to carry all stakeholders in the police sector along in this very important presidential assignment and will ensure that the exercise remains merit-driven, transparent, and according to the laws guiding the public service. Applicants were therefore advised not to be agitated as the exercise is under control and in progress. National Emergency Management Agency NEMA has restated federal government's commitment to quick intervention to victims of flood disaster in Adamawa State. The Acting Director General NEMA, Air Commodore Akube Iyamu, stated this during an on-the-spot assessment visit to flood-affected areas in Yola.
This is our 3rd time here this year from National Emergency Management Agency. He is very passionate about the happenings and follows it. So what we're going to do, thank the state government who is always giving us the support. Adamawa State emergency management is one of the most active and cooperative that we have around. So we'll work with them.
We are very grateful to the federal government for taking that quick decision to come and see by themselves. We appreciate what government is doing now.
The Southeast Governors Forum has acknowledged the safety reasons proffered by the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, for the closure of the Akanu Ibiam International Airport, Enugu, for repairs. Addressing journalists after a closed-door meeting by the governors and the minister in Enugu, the chairman of the forum, David Umahi, assured air travelers using the airport that palliative measures are being put in place to ease difficulties occasioned by the closure.
Honorable Minister of Aviation has assured us that the Akanu Ibiam International Airport would be reconstructed to meet the Abuja International Airport standards.
I want to assure you that we will take in all the seriousness that it deserves, and we should be able to deliver this project, all things being equal, before Christmas. We are conscious and aware of the hardships that you might go through, but I believe it is worth it in the interest of safety.
The Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Mele Kyari, has debunked reports of explosion on the Abura crude trunk line operated by the corporation. The line, situated at Utujerimi town in Ugeli, Delta State, operated by the Nigerian Petroleum Development Company, NPDC, NNPC's upstream subsidiary, was reported by a section of the media to have gone up in flames. A statement by Undu Ugamadu, Group General Manager, Group Public Affairs Division, NNPC, quotes the GMD describing the incident as a mere rupture on the one of the corporation's pipeline, which would be fixed within 3 days, urging the host communities within the area to disregard the rumor and go about their normal activities. That's the news for now. Good morning. Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Kieran after this break. Thank you for watching.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Please, did you hear that?
Of course I did. That is Village El Master tune.
So, Auntie Amebo was not gossiping then?
Village El Master is celebrating 50 years.
50? Already? This is not a joke.
It is a national celebration. NTA and Village El Master family are commemorating 50 years.
Hey, please, tell me, when is our golden jubilee?
It is from the 8th to 11th of October, 2019.
I have to go and get ready. It's time to party.
Women. But we, men, will be there too.
Please.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. Now time for us to take some business stories. A development economist has been reacting to business engagements at TICAD 7, which has just ended in Yokohama, Japan. Let's join our correspondent Kule Adeyeye for details of that story and others.
A development economist, Dr. Emeka Okengo, said President Buhari's requests in Japan are in tune with the country's economic demands. He said critical sectors of the economy will receive a boost.
Let me also say that it's also commendable that he also met with, high-stake investors. Remember that part of the role of government is to create an enabling environment for businesses to strive. We do stand to gain a lot. We do stand to get technology transfer. We do stand to get, new companies. We do stand to get infrastructure and allied infrastructure. We do stand to get, creation of jobs. So there's a lot to stand to get when you get foreign direct investment.
In another development, the federal government has been enjoined to work closely with states that have potential in mineral resources to properly develop that aspect of the economy. According to the president, Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, Nasima Ayola Olukoni, the sector is capable of turning around the country's fortunes and aid diversification.
I saw what mining did for Australia. Western Australia alone makes about $60 billion from the iron ore deposit in Western Australia. The point I'm making is that the private sector has a lot of role to play in this. We are encouraging them to look at it from the perspective of the possible contribution of the private sector, probably private partnership.
With business news, I'm Kunle Adeye.
Thank you, Kunle, for that business package. We appreciate that. Now, next on Good Morning Nigeria is newspaper review.
All right, newspaper reviewer Bayo Atoyebe is right here with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Bayo, and welcome.
Thank
we have 5 newspapers to review this morning, and let's start with the Nigerian pilot, which I have here with me. And below the nameplate, we have Operation Green Sweep. NAF jets neutralizes several terrorists at Uwe in Borno State. The story is on page 5. Aftermath of Buhari's riot act, stakeholders embark on spiritual warfare over Tiv Jukun crisis. The story is on page 5 of the Nigerian pilot. Now, the lead story this morning: stop NAS, that's National Assembly, 5.5 billion naira cars, with 3 riders to that. Spending unjust, not fair. There are tiny percentage of Nigerian population. Negates constitutional oath of office. Details on page 8. And now, of course, the photograph, the front page of the Nigerian pilot is that of that was taken in Yokohama, Japan, where TICAD 7 took place. And then below that, we have a perjury. Supreme Court hears suit against Buhari. That's on page 8. And now, at the bottom of the Nigerian pilot, cancellation of 100 million electricity concession agreement illegal, AGF. Activities of IPOP shameful, Biafra Zionist Federation. That's on page 19. FCTA bans donkey meat. That's on page 9. Why Nigeria must be restructured now, says OPC. It's on page 12. Now, we must punish Okorocha. That's on page 11. Find out who said that. Now, flood overruns Osun. Oyetola helpless. It's on page 11.
Well, let's take a look at the photograph on the front page of the New Telegraph. It's right at the bottom half of the New Telegraph, and that story, the photo story there, says flood sacks Osun residents as Oyetola seeks federal government's intervention. You can see the photograph there, and Kirian, you recall we had this conversation on flooding. In fact, it's become a yearly ritual for us, as it were. And there was a clear warning that September, the month we are in now, would witness a lot of deluge, in different parts of the country.
It's not just, making Nigeria or letting Nigerians know about it, but what did those states that have been, mentioned as a flashpoint, what action did they take before now? After getting the vital information on what would happen in September?
Actually, the NIMET and the Nigerian Hydrological Agency did give that warning, and they specifically cited that towards the end of July, August and September are the high peak period of flood. And they identified initially 13 states, and later on, this was increased to about, I think, 28 states. And most of them are within the floodplain of River Niger and Benue. Now, last week, there are indications that probably Lado Dam in Cameroon will have been opened. That means that the whole of Benue Trough is under serious threat of flood. And that is why you have flood in Taraba, flood in Adamawa, along that path. With that of, now we are lucky, Kainji and Jeba dams have not been opened yet. If they are opened, from Lokoja down, from Jeba, Lokoja down, up to the Delta, they all are likely to be inundated. And like you pointed out, since to be forewarned is to be forearmed.
That's right.
But unfortunately, most of the states have labor.
They did nothing.
with their emergency services.
Well, unfortunately, that's part of what we gleaned when we had a conversation and we had the DG of NEMA in attendance. With the exception of a few states in the Federation, most SEMAs, as State Emergency Management Agencies are often referred to in short, are not up to scratch in terms of responding to the rain and flood alerts by the particular agencies. And this is worrisome. You can imagine the losses that will arise from this in terms of personal property, the losses that will arise in terms also from the farmlands where the crops and other items would have been submerged. Pretty sad there. But let's take a look at the front page of Leadership. We may return to New Telegraph presently. Leadership newspaper says, below the nameplate, stock market capitalization gains 1.8 trillion naira in 8 months. And then the lead story says, with a kicker, $9.6 billion UK judgment heads to rule as federal government rules out negotiation with P&ID. With number of riders there, EFCC set for massive arrests. Interpol, UAE and US put on alert. 2 Nigerians and 3 foreigners to benefit from fine. That's page 4. And you see the photograph of the president returning from TICAD in Yokohama, and that was yesterday. You see him waving there to the crowd at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. Senate sued over 5.5 billion naira car budget. That's on page 11. President Muhammadu Buhari didn't abandon Daura flood victims, and that's according to the presidency. Bayo.
Yes, let's take the concern expressed by Mr. President about the conflict between TV and Jukun. Only over the weekend there has been a reported militia attack in Takum again, and it's reported that about 12 persons have been killed. Persons were said to have crossed over the border from Benue into Taraba State. President Muhammadu Buhari has said that the TV and Jukun crisis is one of the worst and persistent conflict crises that have persisted for a long time. And he says that the Akuka and the Tortiv must find means and other religious leaders to bring succor and peace to these areas. Spokesperson for the TIF group, Godwin Dadi, says that since 1953, the TIF and TIF had 10 villages in Wukari area, and they were members of the traditional council. What is causing the problem is that they want to be recognized and given chieftaincy titles so that they can serve as bona fide members in Taraba State. On the other hand, a spokesman for the Jukun youth, his name is Zado Uwoku, he says that the TIF indigenous to Taraba do not want this crisis. However, he alleges that it is the TIF in Benue who are causing the problem with their 10-point agenda. And their 10-point agenda, according to him, is that they want to seek traditional titles in Taraba and acquire more land. And so the issue is basically cross-border communities. And he cites an example that there are also Jukun communities in Benue, in the area he called Asinsi, and they have been recognized as part of those people, but they are not causing trouble. So you have this thing going on.
The issue has become a cancer of salt, you know, and from what you've read out now, reasoning properly, there's nothing at stake in the first instance, you know, based on this coming to take titles, being recognized and all of that. It has happened over the years in so many other areas. If you go to Onitsha area in Anambra State, for instance, you know, you have a good number of Igalas, you know, who are Onitsha people. They recognize that they came from Igala. They still attend functions, you know, in Igala land, yet they are in Onitsha, and they take titles, you know, in Onitsha. So it is a communal thing, because the Jikuns are living in Benue, the thieves are living in Taraba. So what is the point?
It's land dispute and territory, that's just it. The other point of interest is that the special assistant to the president on media, Garba Shehu, has dispelled the information that the Dabchi school girl, the only one who was held when 100 of her colleagues were returned, has come to any harm. Garba Shehu said the girl who was held back because she refused to renounce her Christian faith is alive. He says that the government has contact through the security with the people and giving assurance that the links will continue and it will remain open until negotiations are concluded to secure her release. His government will leave no stone unturned to ensure that she is returned, not only her, but other persons who have also been so abducted are returned to their families safely.
Okay, New Telegraph newspaper, among other headlines that they have, some already read by Kieran from the other papers and which also took from the leadership. Lead story says 12 banks garner 24.3 trillion naira deposit in 6 months. That's the deposits that they have raked in, 24.3 trillion naira. Post 414.14 billion naira profit after tax in half year. Equities market, investors lose 116 billion naira in 1 month. That's page 2. The question arising from this headline is obviously this. If banks are raking in 24.3 trillion naira in deposit in 6 months and are posting a profit of over 400 billion naira after tax in half year, how much of, not just tax is, no, profit after tax is indicated there, that's PAT. How much of these deposits are they lending to the real sector? How much of the profit of the deposits are they lending to MSMEs? You find the central bank itself is now playing the virtual role of commercial banks.
Yes.
So you are having all these figures that some persons will say, look, these are just paper figures that probably have no real impact in terms of the real sector growth of the economy.
And when the banks, finally decide to give you a loan, the interest that of course,
usury.
So who will take it?
That's right. All right, last story, Bayo.
There's this other story you read about the P&ID. There's indication that the process and industrial development is now available for negotiations. Punch is reporting that a spokesman from P&ID had indicated that they are ready for negotiations if federal government will engage them and also send a response team. It may be recalled that P&D had actually revolved in initiative by the Nigerian government to negotiate as far back as 2017. It was after they secured arbitration that they now filed that at a British court, which gave them award. And currently, they have filed a claim in USA and in United Kingdom. And that is why the Attorney General of the Federation had indicated that Nigeria has appealed. But meanwhile, there is danger lurking, and Governor Abubakar Bello of Niger State has ordered immediate removal of all illegal motor parks along major highways in Niger State. This is sequel to tanker explosion over the weekend at Diko. And as many as 30 persons were killed, 19 were injured, 19 cars were burned, and 35 shops were razed. And the danger here is that you have instances where tanker park on both ways of the highway.
Yes.
And it becomes an obstruction for vehicles passing. Any slight instance, you are going to have uncontrollable fire. It is there at Tarfa, on the way between Abuja, Kaduna. If you are going to Kotongora, on the way to Mokwa, there's a place called Makira. The same thing. Tankers park on both ways of the highway. Between Kaduna and Zaria, at Mararaba Jos, you find the same thing. And one begins to, even closer here, at Lambata, the junction towards Bida, tankers, petrol tankers have taken over one portion of the dual carriageway. So vehicles are forced to go only on one way, under the guise that because of safety, they are not supposed to travel during daytime and on that area.
See, part of the problem is that on our roads, we don't have tanker bays. When we construct roads elsewhere, you have bays for them to park. Constructed bays that will have like accommodation and what have you for tankers. Because if you ask a tanker driver, what does he do with the tanker? Perhaps after the day's duty, where does he park it? It's something developmental issue. If you ask me,
there is tanker park, for instance, at Tarfa, but they don't use it.
It's also they also have a so-called trailer park at Ogere. Ogere. That's on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. But what is happening is, first of all, it's a call on the Federal Road Safety Corps to ensure that the highways, are clear, whether the hard shoulder, or any of the lanes taken over. And then for state governments, to get ahead with the construction more trailer parks. And I'm sure if they did this, the incident will be managed. And of course, if you have a trailer park, it means that the drivers who are laying by will have to pay some money. It's a revenue. But don't go and construct all these trailer parks that will start deteriorating within a matter of weeks or a matter of months.
We still have a blueprint here. Just a few on blueprint. The lead story. Let's end insurgency now. That says the Minister of Defense. And then at the bottom of the blueprint, we have some stories there. Well, first we've read about 5.5 billion luxury cars. Serap, executiously 6,721 others sue National Assembly for planning to spend 5.5 billion on luxury cars. That's on page 5. And then TCN cancellation of 100 million power pact threat to national security, says the AGF. Federal government okays 3 billion naira for Zamfara Roga. We will use name for 2020 UTME registration. That's all there. Now, Bashir Ahmed, one of Nigeria's finest journalists, says Buhari. That's on page 5.
Okay, Bayo, we already pressed for time. We're going to take the editorial, but I'm sure that tomorrow will be another day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being around. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we're dealing with matters arising from the just concluded TICAD 7 in Yokohama.
They are there at the crack of dawn. They are there busy preparing while we rise for our day. They are there silently, guarding, waiting, listening, and watching. They are there ready in the sky above and the waters below, in the blistering heat of the day, in the dead of night, willing, indefatigable, determined in the defense of the sovereignty of our country. They are our first line of defense and our last. They who have paid the ultimate price in defending us. They are fathers and uncles. They are mothers and sisters and girlfriends and boyfriends. They are brothers and cousins and best friends and neighbors. They are classmates, colleagues, and citizens of this nation. They are our defenders and deserve our respect, our prayers, our thoughts. Nigeria, please support our armed forces.
Advertising your goods and services on the right channel gives you an edge over your competitors. NTA News 24 has all the platforms for your target audience. The station is on DSTV channel 419, GoTV channel 46, StarTimes channel 101, and Free TV channel 703. With our digital format and wide range, we can reach your customers in next to no time. We are eager to promote your business, goods, and services. So partner with us for a very rewarding business experience. For more information, please call Henry on 0803-379-0884 or visit our office at NTA Headquarters, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. NTA News 24. News and more news.
And in case you just joined us, this is Good Morning Nigeria on Africa's largest TV network, the NTA. Now, our discussion segment today, as we've already informed you, will focus on matters arising from the just concluded 7th Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD 7 in Yokohama, Japan. And of course, to set the tone for the conversation, here is our correspondent, Abdulsalam Jibril, with this background report.
The Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD, has become a major global platform for Asian and African countries, as well as international stakeholders, to collaborate for Africa's development. At the just concluded TICAD 7, the Nigerian delegation, led by President Muhammadu Buhari, had robust bilateral engagements which attracted a bouquet of goodies, not only for the country, but for the African continent. A memorandum of understanding was signed between Nigeria and the European Union to the tune of 50 million euros to help Nigeria's humanitarian efforts in the Northeast. At the bilateral meeting between President Buhari and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan, the Japanese leader pledged the sum of $300,000 for Nigerian's Defense College, as well as 12 million yen to boost the country's health sector. The Toyota conglomerate also met with President Buhari, expressing interest in energy, healthcare and automobile sectors, while the Nigerian president insisted on having Toyota automobile plants established in Nigeria to create jobs for Nigerians. During TICAD 7, President Buhari also sought Japanese investments in renewable energy, petrochemicals and gas, maritime, pharmaceuticals, and ICT. On the sidelines, President Muhammadu Buhari also met with South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa over the maltreatment of Nigerians in South Africa, and President of Benin Republic, Patrice Talon, over the partial closure of the border. While many experts have described Nigeria's attendance at TICAD 7 as successful, what are the immediate and long-term benefits for Nigeria? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will provide answers shortly.
All right, thank you very much there for that backgrounder. We have guests with us in the studios as well as remote locations from where we're going to have them join in this conversation. First, let's welcome Mr. Femi Adesina, who is a special advisor to the President on media and publicity and was part of the President's team at TICAD 7. Mr. Adesina, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning.
Okay. Also here with us in the studios, would like to welcome a familiar face on the program is Ambassador Usman Sarki, is a former Deputy Permanent Representative of Nigeria at the United Nations in New York, and is now a directing staff at the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, NIPS, that's at Kuru, near Jos. Ambassador, delighted to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being with you.
Okay. Also here in the studios, we'd like to welcome another familiar guest, is Dr. Mukhtar Imam. Is a lecturer in the Department of International Relations and Diplomacy at Bayes University, based here in Abuja.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
And from our Jos studio, we have His Excellency the Governor of Plateau State, Simon Bako Lalong, who was also in Japan as part of the delegation from the Nigeria's Governors Forum. Your Excellency, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Very much, and good morning, viewers.
Via Skype from Japan, we have Mohammed Ghana Yesa, who is the Nigeria's ambassador to Japan. Ambassador, good morning and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. I don't know what the time is in Japan, but this is morning in Nigeria. You're welcome to the program.
Good morning. Good morning, Nigerians. It's about 4 here in Japan now.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Let's, in fact, begin the conversation with you. You're joining us via Skype. And you were host to Mr. President and his delegation, and indeed all others who came in from Nigeria to attend TICAD 7. From a diplomatic point of view, what's your evaluation of TICAD 7 and Nigeria's participation thereat?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to appreciate His Excellency, the President and Commander-in-Chief of Nigeria, President Buhari, for making it to Japan after a journey of about 20 hours, and for all his engagements while in Japan, Tokyo. Now, for the first time, we had about 200 Nigerians participating this year at the TICAD 7 event. This is the first time a contingent as large as that would attend this type of event. And let me also add that the attendance by about 11 states from Nigeria was also well recognized by the host community. And then we also have major players in the Nigerian industry and the economic sector attending this year's TICAD event, from Bank of Industry, NEPSA, NIPC, NEPC, and so on. But we also have universities, Nigerian universities attending this event. So by and large, from a diplomatic point of view, it was like the Nigerian delegation overshadowed most of the other delegates from other countries in Africa. And most importantly, the engagements Mr. President had with other African leaders were also very, very critical. And as you said earlier in the program, that the president also met with the Japanese Prime Minister and also witnessed the signing of an agreement with EU as part of the EU's assistance to Nigeria to help cater for the IDPs. And all this came within the framework of the TICAD event. It was an intensive engagement, really, because throughout the 7 days that the event lasted, including Mr. President and Nigerian delegation, everybody was really busy and engaged with the Japanese players and captains of industries in Japan and other countries, and also with the co-organizers of the World Bank, UNDP, and UN. All these were active participants at the TICAD event this time around. And let me also say that, as you may recall, that in the 80s and a little before 80s, Japan's involvement in Nigerian infrastructure development was very, very critical, especially in the refinery sector and also in the power sector. And as a matter of fact, Japanese built some of our transmission lines in the 80s and late 70s. But because of military encroachment, they at a point left Nigeria. And so I'm so happy this time around that Mr. President was in Tokyo and he was able to engage Japanese at many levels. And we expect that going forward, that we should see renewed involvement of Japanese companies in the infrastructure development of Nigeria. The Japanese have continuously assisted Nigeria in many ways, but this time around, we really want them to come into our major infrastructure sector, like in the power sector and also the rail development sector and the road construction sectors. And they have promised that they are prepared to come to Nigeria to work with Nigerians to move our infrastructure sector forward. They are ready to partner with the Nigerian government and with Nigerian private sector to move forward the infrastructure development of the country. It may interest Nigerians to note that the TICAD process has been on since 1993, and the Japanese have involved themselves with developments in Africa. But we expect that Nigeria should benefit a lot more than we have benefited up to now. We expect more benefits from Nigeria this time around, more so that the path to peace and security, that path has been cleared by this government, and we expect that the much needed security guarantee is going to be provided by this government, because that has been one of the fears of Japanese people, that Nigeria is insecure. But Mr. President has assured them that with the plans on ground by government, that we expect this security issue in Nigeria to be resolved. And with that, they can move in freely to Nigeria to support the efforts this government is already making towards improvements, especially in our power sector, in rail sector, and in road construction and other industries. Thank you.
All right, Ambassador, thank you very much for that opening remarks. And you have indeed touched on very salient matters and points concerning TICAD and the benefits, the derivable from being part of it. And recall that, as you mentioned too, that they started since 1993. And one would like to see much of Japanese footprints on Africa. But let me give you this. Satoshi Ozawa is the co-chair of a sub-Saharan African Committee of Japan Business Federation. It's a very big lobby business group in Africa. And he made one point that, yes, Japanese companies and firms are beginning to develop interest in engaging Africa, especially when it comes to investment. He also added a caveat that over 3 years, many Japanese firms in Africa are facing challenges, and some of them have stalled business activities. So let's get to some specifics. So what are the assurances or the guarantee that these TICAD meetings held at different fora during the event would yield the developmental dividends that are targeted?
Okay, thank you very much. As you noted, the TICAD conference of this year is over. What is important now is follow-up on some of the pronouncements that have been made. And in the past, we have lacked follow-up on certain issues, and probably that is part of why anticipated results were not met in the past. But most importantly, the Japanese government has promised to share whatever risks Japanese companies fear in dealing with Africa, whatever risks they think they have to take to deal with Africa. The government has assured all Japanese companies that they are ready to share whatever risks they are afraid of. And I think this is very, 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 very important. Also, as you said earlier in your program, the JBIC, Japan Bank for International Cooperation, has also assured that whatever funds are required by Japanese companies to engage in Africa or engage with Africa, they are ready to provide such funds. So I think that with these assurances coming both from the Japanese government and the bank, and with proper follow-up from African countries, especially the governments, I think that this time around, there should be impacts that will be visible to all. And not.
Oh, sorry. It seems we lost the connection there to Ambassador Yisa, who is with us via Skype from Japan. I'm sure once our engineers clear that up, we'll return to him. But in the meantime, let's go over to Jos, where the Executive Governor of Plateau State, Dr. Simon Lalong, has been introduced earlier, and he was part of the delegation to the TICAD 7. Of course, under the auspices of the Nigeria Governors Forum. Your Excellency, what were your takeaways as a governor at TICAD 7? TICAD 7.
Thank you very much. A lot of it. First of all, let me say that the Governors Forum went with about 10 governors, 3 together with Mr. President, and then another group led by our chairman, that is Governor Fayemi, with 3 governors, and then about 4 representatives of governors who are not able to be there themselves. But all the states not only went with their governors, but they went with representatives, that is, specialists from the various fields in their states. And like Mr. Ambassador said, we also went there. Whatever is coming to the federal government is not coming to the federal government because the federal government is not merely an entity, it's also a composition of the states. And so the benefits that Mr. President is bringing is also a benefit that is going to transcend to all the various states. That's why we were there. But apart from what Mr. President was doing, we also had our side conversation. We had side meetings with various organizations, very high-profile international organizations, international corporate organizations, in respect of various areas. For instance, we discussed about agriculture and its value chain. We also mentioned science and innovation, especially the younger ones. Of course, you know, Plateau is very, if you talk about science innovation for younger ones, Plateau is always number one now. Is always number one. We also look at infrastructure development, how we can also get some assistance in respect to developing infrastructure in our various states. And then small and medium enterprises, that is the SME, the waste management and renewable energy. In the course of our discussions, we had interactions with a high-profile group, and it is called Grassroots Initiative for Tangible Change in West Africa. And where we met also the Afri-Japan, that is the acronym, Afri-Japan, a group of business organizations with very good investment potentials. And so it was now left to the states to open up to all these various organizations. And so don't forget, we are also part of what federal government will bring, part of the 50 billion that is going to come from Japan. And so when we met with these various groups, we had interactions, we had open discussions, and a lot of states were even able to gain and sign some kind of what I will call memorandum for future intervention in their various states. Plateau was no exception, because we had our discussions at that level with some of them, especially in respect to youth empowerment, level of youth empowerment and youth innovations. So I will say that we didn't go there for mere jamboree. We gained a lot from assisting the federal government and also taking home a lot of things that will also help, especially like the assurance of the assistance of a loan of about $300 million to some states, $300 million to some states. We have seen that happen in some of the states, and eventually, so when you invest well, instead of a loan, they turn it into a grant. And so all of us are keen into it. And we are only representative of our various states, of the various states of the Federation, but particularly many states that were there left home with a lot of things.
Your Excellency, thank you indeed. We are still remaining with you. This is not the first or the second time Nigerian government is engaging in such international conferences across the globe. We had that with China, sometime last year, and this time we were talking about TICAD. Now, you told us that about 10 governors were in attendance, and of course you have a focus, which of course have to attract development to states of Nigeria. Now, one question is, Your Excellency, that what has become so problematic in the governance of this nation is the fact that sometimes the subnational governments do not key into federal government initiatives, not just on this TICAD issue, but in other matters. Now, what are the assurances that your colleagues who are driving the ship of their states are prepared to ensure that whatever gains are accruable from TICAD meeting will trickle down to Nigerians, because the majority of Nigerians are in states? What is the guarantee that this time around that there is seriousness attached to this event?
I must say that in the last one, the last summit in Japan and also in Kenya, I think there was no consciousness like the one we went this time around. Those ones, I think they attended, and no special invitation to the governors. But I told you that in this case, it was a special invitation to Mr. President and a separate special invitation to the governors. The governors had a meeting before some governors went to represent the various governors. You can see the level of determination now as we focus on diversification. Gone are the days when it was petrol. You sit down, you rush to Abuja, and you are getting allocation. But now, after the bailouts and everything, all governors are determined. Everybody is determined to find ways out. And that is why when opportunities come like this, governors will rush to that place, not to go there separate from federal government, but also to collaborate with federal government, because whatever federal government is going to bring on behalf of the states. And also the states will also need to key in. We are already having the regular Economic Council and under the supervision or chairmanship of Mr. Vice President. And we've gone far. We've listed many of the progress that we've seen in this dispensation, under this dispensation, as a result of the interactions at the National Economic Council. So problem of investment, problem of creating opportunities, problem of ease of doing business is the focus of the states in every aspect. So issues of opportunities for investment in various states is taken seriously at the various states. So you don't need to even tell the governors, because everybody is going through hardship. Everybody is going through hardship, and everybody needs to think out of the box if you want to get yourself out of the hardship. So it's no longer an issue of option for governors. So that is why you see us keying into it. As we come back, we are also going to address the governors forum to tell them these opportunities through our discussions and through our linkages with these various organizations.
All right. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We'll return to you presently in the course of this conversation. But we have three guests with us here in the Abuja studios. Special advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina, Ambassador Sarki, as well as Dr. Imam. Gentlemen, you've listened to the other two guests. Mr. Femi Adesina, you were part of the President's delegation. Give us a lowdown of what transpired at TICAD 7.
Well, after the ambassador spoke, I asked myself what I was going to say again, because he virtually gave us a lowdown of what happened in Yokohama.
Give us journalistic point of view.
Yes. Like he said, it was an intensive program, quite intensive, but I'll add that very rewarding. Oftentimes you hear people say, what did you bring? As if it was a buying and selling thing. And I often tell them, no, these international conferences and events are not like you go to buy and sell and you come back and say, this is my gain. They may not be immediate. They may come in later. But this one, you have low-hanging fruits that you could pluck immediately, and you have a lot that will also be coming. It was very intensive. The ambassador says 7 days, yes, because the ministers had gone ahead and they have held their own sessions, but the head of states and presidents met for 3 days. At the end of it all, I believe that Nigeria got a good bouquet for itself, and Africa got even a larger one. It was well worth it.
Thank you. Ambassador Usman, Sarki Usman. Well, of course, you will give us a diplomatic perspective, but let's clarify this. Because while the president was in Japan, there were some reports in the local media, in the Nigerian media, to the effect that, the G7 was meeting in France, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan was in France, and then you had the Nigerian president heading to Japan. there seemed obviously to have been an overlap between the G7 meeting and TICAD 7 meeting, TICAD 7 summit that took place. In terms of evaluating the diplomatic mileage, what would be your perspective?
Thank you very much for having me on the show. First of all, before I respond to your question, I should like to congratulate Mr. President and our delegation for a very brilliant outing. The critical factor that Nigeria needed for quite some time is confidence of the international community in the country. The presence of Mr. President in such a meeting has enhanced the confidence of countries, Japan, the rest of the international community, the European Union in the country to come and transact business with us. So I think that is the first and most critical, benefit out of that conference. Now, the diplomatic overview is that the presence of Prime Minister Abe in, France and our president landing in Japan in his absence is not such a critical diplomatic, faux pas or gap. There were structures in Japan whereby high-level dignitaries will be received. You should know that the head of state in Japan is the emperor. The emperor is in the country, but because he is ceremonial emperor, he will not come to receive visiting heads of state. But there are representatives of the prime minister. Ordinarily, even if the prime minister is in Tokyo, the reception at airport, depending on the practice of the country, can be conducted by another official, and then the president will be received in the state house by the prime minister or the president of that country. But in the end, Shinzo Abe went back. He met with Mr. President bilaterally, and also he welcomed all the delegates who were there. So there wasn't any diplomatic friction or incident or unnecessary, lowering of standard. It is to be expected. There are two concurrent meetings. He was out of the country. He came back and met Mr. President, and everything went well. I think we should look at the substance of the engagement and not the the trappings. Although the trappings diplomatically they're important, but the critical thing is how did the conference end it? It ended well, and on a note of high confidence in Africa, led by Nigeria, if I may say so. And the other diplomatic aspect, which many people are not paying attention to, is the critical role now Africa plays in the international community today. Africa now is leading the world in terms of focusing on development, focusing on peace and security, focusing on climate change, focusing on human development, focusing on civil society, on women and young people, on ending conflict. While you see trade war being heightened up between major economic powers, problems in the EU with Brexit, and conflicts elsewhere in Middle East and so forth, Africa is now gravitating towards peaceful cooperation, peaceful coexistence, and creating multilateral platforms whereby economic, social, environmental, and other technological benefits will come to the continent. So that is the overview I could give you. Let me add something. Those who made heavy weather of the fact that G7 was going on when the president landed in Japan, they were just raising storm in a teacup. Because G7 ended on a Tuesday. TICAD 7 started on a Wednesday. And Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was in Japan to welcome the other presidents, and he spoke at the opening ceremony. There is no way you would leave Nigeria for Japan maybe on a Tuesday and be there for the opening ceremony. So Mr. President needed to arrive Japan on Monday, as he did. There was no overlap, just as you say.
Okay, let's agree that both presidents were on diplomatic shuttles. I know that. All right, thank you, gentlemen. Let's come to Dr. Mukhtar Imam. Dr. Mukhtar Imam, an analyst put it this way, that the bottom line is not just for African nations to woo investors to establish businesses in Africa for the development of the continent, but lies in whether the African countries feel confident that they will become global economies good news. You know, going by the fact that what we have on ground may not be necessarily attractive to any investor across the globe, except for those who want to take risks. What's your comment?
Well, I'll start from the last part where you landed. I think what we have on ground is very, very enticing. That's the reason why, like Ambassador mentioned, Africa has become the next frontier. This is where the world is coming to, and that's because of what we have. Again, I think I align myself with the position of whoever that analyst is. It's very key that we understand that beyond just the discussion of African leaders going to the international community and demanding and requesting and even sometimes begging for handouts and so on and so forth. There is the need to look at how we present ourselves. In diplomacy, like I have often mentioned, you're bargaining from one of three positions. You're either bargaining from a position of strength, a position of weakness, or a no position at all. So it is very key that at this point in our existence, that our leaders understand that once you're confronting another leader, you're meeting him as a king meeting a king. We don't go begging cap in hand for things that we already possess. Yes, there might be potentials that we have, but we will be able to harness them. So it is very, very important. Having said that, I again want to join all the others in congratulating the president and the country at large in the organized presentation that we saw in TICAD in Japan. It is very apt. The theme, particularly for the conference this year, was very apt, and it's a welcome development. Diplomacy, of course, has been in the front burner of issues from time immemorial, and it's going to be there beyond now. And as a matter of fact, trade amongst nations and relations amongst countries is one of the three reasons that have helped avert a third world war. It is very, very key. Interrelations among states, interdependence among states within the international system has helped to temper down the agitations, the confrontations that we would have seen, which would have spiraled into a third world war. So yes, it is a welcome development. And again, I must congratulate the president and Nigerians at large for what we see in recent times. And what am I talking about? Nigeria's diplomatic image within the international system has become, over the years, say in the last 3-4 years, very remarkable. We have been embraced across the world within the international community as having displayed certain level of credence. Yes, of course, you would have bad eggs here and there, but this is very, very key to take home. Now, apart from what we've seen happen, I mean, what has played out in Japan, I think beyond the conversations that have happened, beyond the bilateral agreements, beyond the memorandums that have been signed and so on and so forth, we need to begin to reverse this situation and look at not just what these countries within the international community can do for us, but what we also have to offer as well. It is also very, very key that we look at that. Because if we consistently talk about what these countries can or should do for us, what should we do for ourselves? For crying out loud, this is the second largest continent in the world. Look at the resources we possess. In Nigeria, every state has at least one mineral resources. Shouldn't we begin to talk about how we will harness these resources, both in mineral and in human, and find how we can synergize to uplift the living standard of our people? I think this is where the conversation should begin to go. Yes, we see a bit of that. I think TICAD is, beyond what we saw, a platform that African leaders should have used. I am very well aware that a lot of them had side meetings, which is very normal with conferences like that, to have conversations on how to move the continent forward. These are some of the things we should begin to see, because the conversation itself was around Africa and Africans.
And Kinsley, before you take your question, so what he just said is quite interesting, because a Kenyan professor, he's a Professor Makau Mutua, he's the board chairman of the Kenyan Human Rights Commission. He said that TICAD is a begging meeting. And why did he say so? He said that African leaders prepared to make Africa attractive, not to go begging, but make your place attractive. Resources are not enough. Infrastructure, power, and what have you.
That's right. Well, Kirian, that's a valid proposition. And following from what Dr. Imam has said, I would like us to return to His Excellency, the Governor of Plateau State, and get the benefit of his interaction, of course, along with his colleagues, with others who were present at the TICAD side meetings. Now, Dr. Imam is here talking about how we frame our engagements at international meetings, whether on the sidelines or on the main agenda. Is this a quid pro quo approach, or, we're still going with a begging bowl, and in a world, where there is already donor fatigue? So, Your Excellency, what was the experience of the governors in Jos, in TICAD, in Yokohama? What was the experience? I mean, what was the quid pro quo? I'll give you one example now, aside from the governors. I mean, I would be shocked if we didn't try to look for Chiyoda, which constructed the Kaduna refinery in the late 1970s. And here we are grappling with 4 refineries that are producing less than 20% installed capacity. Your Excellency.
I said it earlier that in the course of our side meetings, we also saw a lot of exhibitions, and also exhibitions by very big companies, and also we had opportunity in dialogue of how to also gain the finance, especially in some of our projects. Like somebody is saying that sometimes they call it begging. It's not really all about begging. We were also able to sell ourselves. I know that in some of the states, when with even exhibitions from their various states, there were exhibitions from Niger and some other states, and which drew attraction from other foreign investors to also key in and come and explore the opportunity, especially in solid minerals. We have a lot of it here, and when we engaged them, we saw the desire for some of them to also come and invest in Nigeria. Now, apart from the exhibitions, I mentioned innovations in entrepreneurship. The vogue now is about skill acquisition and youth empowerment, and also youth empowerment. I mentioned what a product from Plateau did. A young man who constructed a car and got the SME award last year. This year, I also had another one from my state getting another SME award. What do we do with this kind of thing? The best thing to do is to get them engaged. Unfortunately, I was even going to take them to Japan, but they didn't get the visa. Because if I had taken them to Japan, I told them that I know you won't come back again. I'll come back again. But when you come back in a big way. That will be great benefit to Nigeria. And then we identified areas of collaboration with TICAD. There's one organization they call JICA. That is Japan International Cooperation Agency for African Development in Africa, for capacity building. Now, when you talk of skill acquisitions, we also mention how to build the capacity, how to enhance the capacity. And so we had our interactions directly with these people, and also with the rest of the African delegations that were there. For us in Plateau, and for some of the states, we also signed to become members of the Japan African Chamber of Commerce in Japan. It's called AFCCJ, African Chamber of Commerce in Japan. And by signing this agreement, it means that we don't need to be going there again. So whatever we have in our states as a kind of collaboration with these people, it is now direct. We have direct access. We have direct access. And so when we come back and we take advantage of these opportunities, it will catalyze into growth and create impact on job creation and employment generation. It will also improve our per capita income and also lay the key foundation for stability. But of course, like I said, you cannot do that alone without synergy with the federal government. So I said that it is a very commendable approach by Mr. President. I realize that since the inception of this government, he has never traveled to such occasions without picking 2 or 3 governors to go along with them. Now, when we go, we also see what is happening, and we come back. Apart from what he will bring, we'll also use the opportunity to inform our colleagues of the huge opportunities available in the course of our journey. So, like I said, and you kept on mentioning Jos. Jos is now open for investment, like other states. It makes us to create the enabling environment. And what we gain from there, we are now doing our best to make the enabling environment a conducive atmosphere for them to come in.
Thank you, Excellency. What I've taken from all you have said, very important to me and those who believe in that, is that JOS is doing well now in science, technology, and innovation, because 99.9% of whatever we want to attract from Japan must be driven by science, technology, and innovation, and there are no two ways about it. That I'm happy that Plateau is doing well in that area. Thank you once again. Now let's return to Japan, where we have a Nigerian ambassador to that country, Ghana Isa. Ambassador, I'm going to ask you this. Over 40 African leaders were in Beijing, China last year for FOCAC. That's a forum for China-Africa cooperation. But analysts describe TICAD 7 as Japanese own way of seeking to consolidate its influence across the continent. And this is occasioned by what China's overreaching infrastructure and resources interest in Africa. Now, I'm asking this because you are in Japan and you understand the business philosophy and ideology of an average Japanese businessman. Are you convinced that after all these signings of memorandum of understanding and what have you, that we are going to get a good bargain?
Okay, thank you very much. Japanese pride themselves of the highest level of technological development. And they also preach that whatever they want to do must be of high quality, the highest quality possible. Now, to bring investment or support to any country, not only African countries, it takes Japanese some time to decide, unlike the Chinese that could decide very easily and within a very short period of time and get themselves engaged in an African country. Japanese take some time. But as a former student here in Japan, and after having studied Japanese people for a very long period of time, the quality of what the Japanese have to offer can be compared with the highest available quality standards. And therefore, if African countries are able to satisfy the initial conditions which they try to pose sometimes, and essentially what they pose as number one issue is the issue of security and peace. Once that is assured, the Japanese are ready to engage with Africa. And earlier on, I think one of you was saying that, was asking whether African leaders have come to Japan cup in hand to beg. I think that African countries have passed that level. And one could hear from the leaders as they speak one after the other, after another, that they were in Japan not to beg. They were in Japan to seek for not grants, but investments. And so that rules out the issue of begging. They were in Japan to ask Japanese to invest in their respective countries. And if you have followed TICAD's development over the years, this year's TICAD is unique in so many ways, in the sense that, unlike in the past, where political discussions, issues of representation here and there took the center stage, this time around, business, trade, and economy took a major stage this time around. Also, it was very, very clear to African leaders that the Japanese are also worried about the involvement of China in Africa. And I think the Japanese are ready to also compete favorably with the Chinese as we move on towards development of infrastructure in Africa. One central issue that was also discussed exhaustively was the issue of peace, security, and stability in Africa. Because all leaders agreed that without peace and security, there can't be any reasonable or sustained development. And this was also emphasized eloquently by most leaders. So I want to agree that moving forward, it is time now for Africans and African leaders to engage the Japanese more on development of infrastructure and other facilities in Africa. And I think...
Well, Ambassador Issa, very quickly, because I threw that as part of the question I asked the governor of Plateau a while ago. Was there any conversation around Chiyoda and the refinery establishment as an investment opportunity in Nigeria?
Well, as you rightly said earlier, Chiyoda was part of development of our refineries in the past. And before the visit of the president, I made all efforts to get an appointment with Chiyoda to get them to meet with Mr. President. Unfortunately, due to reasons best known to them, they were not able to grant me audience. But that notwithstanding, I will still continue to work on Chiyoda to see how we can get them back to Nigeria, because they are not only involved in refinery development, they are also involved in power plants development. And as a matter of fact, I wanted to see them on the issue of development of coal-fired power plants. That was why I wanted to see them, because as you may recall, we have 13 states that have large deposits of coal. And since Japan has developed the technology of nearly emissionless power plants, I thought that I could engage them on that. But unfortunately, they were not willing to meet with me at that point. I had actually wanted them to meet with Mr. President to discuss that and other issues. You may wish to know that today, most of the power generated in Japan is from, a substantial part of it is from coal-fired power plants.
Okay, Ambassador Yusuf, thank you very much. Let's bring in the other ambassador, Ambassador Usman Sarki. The 21st century has seen increased involvement of Asian giants with the African continent. Japan, of course, is TICAD that we are discussing. China is there. That's the question that my colleague Kieran asked earlier. And India also has its own interaction with the African continent. Yeah. But what do we as Africans, and in particular as Nigerians, make of all of these involvements, all of these interactions or engagements with the Asian giants? Two of them are among the top 3 economies of the world. Where are we headed? Can we ramp up our engagement from the beggar bowl that Dr. Imam was talking about and get into real quid pro quo?
Thank you very much. This is the critical question. And many Nigerians and indeed Africans are wondering whether this is a recolonization of the continent by actually allowing ourselves to enter into initiatives driven by other countries, and the whole of Africa will go to one country, meet with the leaders of that, and come back. 54 or 53 or 54 countries going just at the summons of one country. But this is looking at it superficially. The critical thing that is lacking in Nigeria and largely in Africa is precision in policy and also the discipline to implement policies and programs, and building the capacity of government and the state to harness the resources, to bring together all the factors required to develop our countries. Now, the idea of recolonization and so forth are feeble arguments. The critical thing is how ready are we actually to look inwards, to develop our resources, our capacities, and create the environment whereby we can deal with other countries on near equal terms or equal basis. Now, coordination in government is something that is required. For instance, what is the role of the Minister of Finance, National Planning and Budget in translating policies into programs and programs into action? What is the correlation between the federal government and the states, the subnational entities, where if you are talking of minerals, the minerals are not in outer space, they are located in state boundaries. If you are talking of agriculture, they are in the boundaries of the state. What is the relationship between the state and the federal government in terms of coordinating policies to develop the resources? But the important thing also is, what are the long-term plans? Do we have a master plan? Do we have a national plan? The last time I could remember we had a national plan was maybe the third national plan, which was not even carried to its logical end, and we substituted it with things like the structural adjustment program and other things. Today we have the economic recovery and growth plan. But is that a national plan? It is not a national plan. It is a programmatic action addressed at recovery of the economy. What do we have actually to create in terms of a master plan that we can now use to drive the country towards achieving 3 or 4 critical outcomes? One, development of infrastructure, overcoming the power deficit, tapping the mineral and agricultural resources, and creating a scientific and technological base. Without a national plan, our actions will be ad hoc, uncoordinated, driven by expedience and not by policy, and also it will be temporary, because once a government goes, another government that comes in will now think of something else to say, let us bring a program, our own, and forget about that. So the Asian countries that you spoke about, they have continuity, they have vision, they have discipline, and they emphasize coordination. China, once a decision is taken at the Party Congress, that decision is sacrosanct. By the date they said a project will be accomplished, that project is accomplished by that date, regardless of the obstacles. The same thing with Japan, and India is proving to be very efficient today. Are we in that league? I don't think we are in that league. We need to now really enhance the capacity of the civil service. of the governance structure and look at how resources are being used, the little that we have. Does the federal government have control over the states in terms of how they run their budgets? We don't know. And the federal government itself, how does it manage its budget? Mr. President will go to the National Assembly and submit a budget in January or February. In April, May, June, July, you don't have a budget. And when you have a budget, by September, October, implementation of the budget is maybe 30% or 40%. How do you expect countries to take us seriously, to engage with us when we can't even determine how our budget is being executed?
Yeah.
And that is why I mentioned earlier that the Ministry of Finance, Budget and Planning is very, very critical. And also, my last point, we don't tap into institutions. What is the role of the National Bureau of Statistics in terms of creating the platform, giving the data to government on which to work on, to create parameters for choosing our priorities, organizing our system? What is the role of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in terms of actually entering into agreements, treaties, and conventions and other things that will give the legal backing to our relationship with other countries? What is the role of the Ministry of Justice in terms of creating the legal framework whereby once a decision is taken, it cannot be changed, it's sacrosanct? Look at the PINB saga. PI something saga. The minister or the attorney general said they have no records, or actually, he's not very much in tune with what is happening. You don't blame him. The central bank governor said they don't have records there. The Federal Executive Council, it has emerged today that they did not discuss it. So how do you expect countries to come and deal with us at the level of seriousness that is required to drive a system to a certain level in the 21st century, as you mentioned?
Yeah.
We shouldn't be operating the government like native authorities today. Really, we should operate the government at the 21st century level, driven by legality, by technology, by precision, and high level of organization. And that is what this government wants to bring. But the capacity, is it there in the system? That is the question.
Well, well spoken. Very interesting analysis, because we have to call it a spade. And what you said about China and Japan and all that, being serious, especially in terms of implementation of policies, is apt. And let me give you just a comparative little analysis, More than 3,700 Chinese firms operate in Africa, and about 1 million Chinese live in Africa. Against Japan, which are about 800 firms operating in Africa, with about 8,000 Japanese living here. So the parameter is clear, as to, in terms of seriousness and what have you. But let's hope that TICAD will bring a new vista of hope between Africa and Japan.
Kieran, we also have to factor in the almost now eternal rivalry between China and Japan.
All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be doing the concluding part of the show. Stay with us.
Why don't you people sell imported materials here? As beautiful as the shop is.
Auntie, buying foreign goods does not help our economy. Neither does it boost local production. And the good thing is Nigerian-made products are high quality. And to make Nigeria great again, that is why I only sell made in Nigeria products. Because change begins with me.
I'm convinced. Change begins with me too. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back. And it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of Africa's largest television network, the Nigerian Television Authority. Tweets have come in from our viewers, and we'll quickly go through some of them and then return to our guests who are still with us. Omagwala Hambab says, TICAD 7, like many of its kind, has a huge potential for the African continent if we can tap into it. However, we should be circumspect not to take every proposal hook, line, and sinker. We must dissect, examine the pros and cons before we sign up.
All right, from Francis Obi, there should be proper management and investment of whatever financial support we have received into the Nigerian economy and provide information on what has been achieved so far.
Now, this is Comrade Ngala. International Conference of African Development held in Japan. It was a welcome development because a lot of vital issues were discussed, especially establishment of Toyota company, which will create more jobs for the youth.
Now, Akeju Olabaju, the advice is to have more of private representation in such conferences because they are used to the corridor and can consummate investment agreement for faster implementation.
Dele Jack Solomon. Now, the outcome of TICAD 7 is a clarion call to all African leaders to wake up, embrace good governance, and the delivery of most desirous dividends of democracy. They must be visionary, they must be bold, and must support concrete initiatives to boost infrastructure development through science, tech, and innovation.
Now, Isiaku Musa, to attract foreign investments, national security and infrastructure must be provided. TICAD 7 was a great conference on African development.
Badamasi Adamu tweets, now shuttle diplomacy is imperative for the economic and political development of Nigeria and Africa at large. Based on the successes itemized by Femi Adesina on his Facebook page, the conference was productive. We hope the downtrodden will feel the impact. Okay, now Femi Adesina, of course, is still here with us in the studios. Femi, in terms, again, of, this is framing it as follow-up, which has often been a bane. Some analysts will say Ambassador Usman Sakri was already referencing that. President Buhari was at TICAD 6, which took place in Nairobi, Kenya. TICAD 7 is taking place in Yokohama. Between TICAD 6 and TICAD 7, from your own evaluation, what has happened positively for Nigeria?
Well, a lot, because at TICAD 7 there was first a review of TICAD 6, the things promised Africa, and significantly, the consensus was that all that was promised in TICAD 6 was accomplished, which I think is very, very significant. There was a pledge of $30 billion for Africa for infrastructural development. There was another $20 billion for, I think, human development. And there was another pledge on training of manpower. Everything, according to TICAD 7, was accomplished. So it would depend on each country that did not access what it should access. But in terms of general review and performance measurement, the conclusion was that objectives of TICAD 6 were quite accomplished.
Yeah, well, let's narrow it down. Let's bring it down to our own environment. I mean, Africa, there are persons or countries that would have benefited.
Yes.
Are there things we can immediately point to say, look, let's learn our lessons from where we didn't maximize TICAD 6 so that as TICAD 7 is now rolling out in terms of its promises, we're able to tap in and then catalyze our development further?
I agree with that. And just like our ambassador said, this is the time for effective follow-up. If we look at TICAD 6 and we have seen that Nigeria did not benefit enough as it could have, this is the time to begin to look at TICAD 7, all the promises in terms of aids and grants and all that, and how we can maximize them. Fortunately, we had a good delegation, we had a good outing, and it's time for the bureaucracy to follow up. Very important.
Okay, for bureaucracy to follow, just as your ambassador said earlier, that implementation, because down here, when it comes to bureaucracy, it's a matter of delays, a matter of perhaps due process, that's all right, but then the delays that go with it tend to, of course, make government policies, stalled at a point, and people don't get results. Now, let's turn to Dr. Iman. Dr. Iman, speaker after speaker at TICAD meetings urged investors to look beyond Africa's stigma of risks, but focus on its potentialities in terms of being an emerging market. Right, and that is another thing I'd like you to, share. Japan, according to some analysts, has its eyes on the permanent seat at the Security Council, and that Japan is focusing on Africa as a huge support for them to get that achieved, because that country has been planning to see how they can restructure the United Nations as an entity. Now, is the TICAD, I don't know, diplomatically speaking, right, what do you make of this? Their interest in Africa, giving them support, and of course their interest in bearing the risks inherent in Africa if you must do business here.
Well, thank you. You see, the truth is, as far as relations amongst countries within the international system is concerned, whether domestic or international politics, it's always about position, interest, and needs of the players and actors involved. So apparently you will have every state actor trying to pull strings to see how it can benefit from whatever conversation, whatever treaty, whatever conference, whatever agreement, and so on and so forth that goes on within the international system. So yes, it is not very how do I put it? It's not unexpected for us to see the Japanese government try to woo Africans to their side as far as their position within the Security Council is concerned. You heard Shinzo Abe talk about how they supported Nigeria's Professor Tijani Bande to assume the position he has assumed. So it is a very normal, it is a natural occurrence or phenomenon. We should expect that. Every actor tries to do the same. Speaking of investment in Africa, it is apparent. The world sees what potentials we possess. And that's the reason why we saw the shuttle diplomacy that played out when we saw Theresa May, the French president, and so on and so forth, come here to try to see, because the truth is, whoever is talking about investment in Africa must put Nigeria first. 1 out of every 4 Africans is a Nigerian. That's a very significant resource in itself. So yes, again, Africa is the destination for those countries out there. But we must put ourselves into a certain position where we will talk about how we will gain significantly from whatever bargain that goes on within the international system. That's the first and the most essential rationale for the existence of a state. To be able to pull national interest first and to be able to achieve whatever is set to do. So yes, Nigerians need to go out there. Nigerians, conferences like TICAD, conferences like FOCAC we talked about are very, very important platform for countries to engage amongst themselves to be able to see how they can further the course of action. There is no country in the world that lives in isolation. None can survive that way. We need integration. We need to be able to come together. And by the way, when I was talking about African leaders going cap in hand to beg, I wasn't referring to TICAD in particular. This is something that has been long-standing. And it's a trend that needs to be checked. It is something that requires urgent attention. Africa has the potentials. We should be able to go out there and sell ourselves to woo investors to come in. But then again, what must you do or put in place to be able to woo investors? We have a deficit in peace. We have a deficit in development. We have a deficit in infrastructure and governance. We must be able to put in place the enabling environment for these investors to come in. Without the enabling environment, there's absolutely no way investors are going to come into your country. And we must understand and emphasize that the whole idea of foreign aid and loan is just overrated. In 2015, foreign aid constituted just 2% of our growth in Africa. 36%, a whooping 36% came from Africans in the diaspora who send money back to their people at home. So we need to begin to also leverage on that. What are the Africans in the diaspora doing? How do we key into them? How do we get them to come back? Talking about brain gain now. How do we get them to come back in and invest into the development of Africa? Because we're all stakeholders in the African project.
Okay, Dr. Imam, thank you very much. Let's return to Governor Lalong at our Just Network Center. Your Excellency, I still would like also to return to the issue of how we frame our engagements at the international fora. particularly summits such as TICAD, which just took place. Earlier, you were talking about one of the takeaways, or one of the gains, namely skill acquisition. Now, let's break that down. Skill acquisition was the request to train a few persons, whether in Japan, or to come here and train them, or to ask for investment in technical and technological education. We have technical schools, a number of them are barren, as it were, and it's a subject matter that we have taken on Good Morning Nigeria in the past, and there is serious concern that we do not appear to be paying sufficient attention to technical education, rather than just academic education where people go collect SSC certificate and then go to university, do liberal arts, and the next day they say they are looking for work.
Very much. I think it is either way. I think both ways, because we know that the emphasis now is mostly on technical education and also skill acquisition. I mentioned the issue of the SME, and I made a clear example of what I have in my state. A young man from secondary school just graduated from university and was able to put up a car, manufacture and assemble a car. Now, if you have about 10 of them like that, what do you do? The brain is there, but you need some kind of assistance in terms of technology and also innovation from outside, because we can't have it here. Assuming, like I said, I wanted to take him to Japan because I wanted the opportunity, but he didn't get a visa to go. He's very popular. They call him, his name is Jerry Malo, who was the best SMB last year and got a car. The federal government gave him a car, gave me a car. This year, he did a tractor. This year, he has manufactured another Porsche car. So if we have a lot of them like that, and that is why I'm emphasizing on it in my state, and I say that we should also try to do that. If we are talking of technology, we must also talk of transfer of that technology, because we are developing it. But we go to Japan, we were in TICAD, and we saw a lot of things. We had that engagement with a lot of them, and all of them agreed, many of them agreed, to come and invest in also enhancing and building the capacity of our technology. Now, once we get that perfect, we will also be reducing the unemployment on the streets. And so what the last person said is very, very important. We must also, as we are moving up to get some of these assistance, must ensure also that we are disciplined in terms of administrative discipline in our various states as we move into different spheres. So that technology is very, very important. We are transferring it, we are talking of transfer, and we are also taking of opportunities, because if at the end of the day we cannot train all of them here, we can also move some of them outside who are beyond training in Nigeria, move them outside for further training.
Thank you, Governor. Really, we've been interested in Jerry Malo, the young man that manufactured a car, and I can assure you that we have more than 10 Nigerians who have manufactured car. One Musa from Niger State did a wooden car, right, and which he displayed at the last concluded science expo. So we thank you for paying attention to technology and innovation. And it's good to announce here that Nigeria, currently Nigerian engineers, about 60 of them are currently in China training on the manufacturing of transformers and, of course, a reading of high voltage tension. They're in China at the moment receiving training, courtesy of the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure, NASENI, which is, of course, a part of the presidency. So I think on the issue of acquiring knowledge, the government is actually doing something in that direction. Now, let's return to Ambassador. Your final thoughts on this.
Well, thank you very much. The theme of TICAD 7 was African development through people, technology, and innovation. So the last point you made, and His Excellency the Governor made, was very critical. What is the capacity of Nigeria today in terms of scientific, technological development and innovation? What are the institutions that are driving this? and also what is the role of the private sector. So I think, what I would suggest, very respectfully, is for the president, since he led Nigeria's delegation and came back, he should now direct the government, particularly the National Economic Council, chaired by the vice president, to really hold a high-level meeting of all stakeholders to define the parameters of TICAD and devise implementation strategies in the next 1 or 2 months. TICAD is based on 3 pillars, and the 3 pillars were actually to be attained based on 5 parameters or 5 compartments: actors, the responsible implementers, the framework, the timeline, and the institutions, and so forth. How are we going to now translate the outcome of the declaration to national policy? Vice President should now call institutions like NIPS, the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, the National Bureau of Statistics, the Raw Materials Council, NOTAB, all the critical institutions that will now contribute towards formulating a policy for the next 3 years. We cannot go to such institutions, such meetings, come back to the country, and after 3 years, we go and adopt another declaration without going there to say, these are the benefits that we have on the ground. So we need to be really practical, focused, and determined. Institutional coordination, capacity, and the political will to drive the process are very critical. And for the time being, I think we need to really focus on these things.
All right, Ambassador Usman Sarki, thank you very much. Let's go also very quickly to Ambassador Gana Yisa, who is still with us via Skype. Ambassador Yisa, it was news to my ears that when you were indicating the size of the Nigerian delegation, that they included academics from Nigerian universities, and indeed several other persons that you listed. I was just wondering, does the Nigerian mission in Tokyo, that's covering Japan now, have an information officer? And how well was information about Nigeria's participation at TICAD 7 reported back to the Nigerian audience? Or was it just mere reliance on the president's own media team?
No. Thank you very much. Of course, we have an information division. And a lot of what happened in TICAD is being uploaded on the website of the mission. And we'll continue to see a lot of information on what has been done during TICAD 7 as we move within this week, as the week runs out. Now, I wanted to say that I agree with Ambassador Serki that, you see, TICAD is every 3 years. And whatever pledges the Japanese have made during this TICAD will lapse in the next 3 years. So it is important, very, very important, that we as a country, we make concrete arrangements as to what we want to achieve in the next 3 years from this TICAD process. That is very, 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 very important, because definitely the Japanese will not come in with their investment or intervene in any developmental program of the government if we do not say in clear terms what we actually want. So that is why from onset I was talking about follow-up. Let us, as Ambassador Serki was saying, let the relevant bodies of government meet and say, okay, for this TICAD period of 2019 to 2022, let the government of Nigeria say this is what form of intervention we want, and then we'll push it to the Japanese to respond to that. Because as Mr. Femi Adesina was saying, in the last 3 years, yes, we benefited from the TICAD process, but we didn't get as much as we should have as a country. and as large as Nigeria is, other countries, especially in East and Southern Africa, benefited more than Nigeria, and probably because we didn't have a clear-cut idea of what to demand from the process. So I think.
All right. Thank you indeed, Ambassador to Japan, Mohammed Ghana Isa. We've actually taken down your contributions. Thank you very much immensely for sparing your time to be part of this program. Thank you very much. We are hoping that TICAD will yield dividends in due course. And gentlemen, this is where we conclude today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. And let me appreciate Femi Adesina, Special Advisor to the President of Media and Publicity. Femi, thank you for being here. And Ambassador Usman Sariki, former Deputy Permanent Rep of Nigeria to the UN. We appreciate your contribution this morning. Thank you for coming. And of course, young Dr. Mukhtar Imam, lecturer, Department of International Relations and Diplomacy, Base University.
Relatively young.
Relatively young. Yeah, we thank you for coming. We thank you very much. And of course, the governor of Plateau State, who's been wonderful. He's becoming a regular face on Good Morning Nigeria. So we appreciate your time on the show today. Thank you very much indeed for being part of our program today. And please continue to promote science, technology, and innovation in Plateau State.
All right. So that does it for the conversation segment. Let's see what's happening on the sports